Newton City Council voted 19 yeas, 4 nays with 1 absent in favor of an ordinance that will prohibit the sale of tobacco in perpetuity to anyone born after March 1st, 2004. Here is a look at why and how the councilors voted from their January 21st, 2025 meeting.
On January 8th, the committee, Programs and Services, voted to amend the proposed item so that it now reads that anyone born after March 1st, 2004 would be prohibited from purchasing tobacco in the city of Newton. So what this is essentially a lifetime prohibition for anyone purchasing tobacco who's born after that date in the city of Newton. It's not a prohibition on children purchasing. It applies to the people who are about to turn 21 in a month and a half, but it would last for ever after that. So it essentially phases out tobacco sales in the city of Newton. And the committee voted, did I give the committee a vote? It was 5-2 in favor.
January 16 was an important anniversary that went unrecognized. On that date, 106 years ago, the 18th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. This amendment declared that the production, transportation, and sale of alcohol was illegal. Thus began a period of our history which we call Prohibition. Prohibition worked so well that on December 5, 1933, the 21st Amendment to the Constitution repealed the 18th Amendment. I bring up prohibition because that appears to be the goal of the proponents of this ordinance. In discussing this proposed ordinance with Councilor Albright, she informed me that several other towns had adopted this ordinance. Her hope was that the state legislature would notice and take similar action. In this way, the sale of tobacco products would over time become illegal throughout the state. It seems to me that the reason why this country banned alcohol is the same reason why we are considering the generational ban on tobacco products today. Alcohol and tobacco are both bad for your health. When used to excess, these substances can be fatal. So I ask my fellow councilors, would you vote to adopt a similar generational ban on alcohol? And if so, will you docket such an item? And if you would not support a generational ban on alcohol, why do so with tobacco products? I understand the goal of keeping people safe. I agree that government should be a force for good. We can admire the advocates of the 18th Amendment to the Constitution for their idealism and for their progressive values. But it did not take long for a progressive with different priorities to lead the effort to repeal prohibition. His name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. In 1932, he made it a major part of his campaign. And by the end of 1933, prohibition was over. History has much to teach us. Please join me in rejecting this well-meaning but misguided proposal.
I think there's really two separate issues at stake here. One is the issue of youth tobacco use, and the other is the issue of adults' choice around tobacco. Around youth tobacco use, my stance is clear. I think we need to be doing all we can to prevent the use of tobacco amongst our youth. This issue is actually personal to me. 10 years ago, I was a member of Brookline Town Meeting. And I remember when an 18-year-old from Brookline High came to town meeting and said, increase the age, because right now there's 19-year-olds that are bringing tobacco into the school. We increased the age, the ripple effect went across the state, eventually to 21, eventually across the country, and now we have tobacco 21. And I think that was positive policy towards reducing youth tobacco use. I think we can go further. 95% of tobacco use starts before 21, 99% of tobacco use starts before 26. I'm open and glad to file an amendment to restrict tobacco use today, immediately, for anyone 26 and under. If we really want to attack the issue of youth tobacco use, I say we focus on that issue now and we do it effectively. There might be other ideas that Councilor Farrell mentioned using the carrot. There might be better and more severe consequences we can place on store owners for selling to youth. Councilor Albright mentioned that the Youth Commission spoke at our meeting last week. I actually heard something different. I heard them say there's an issue of tobacco use in our schools. Kids are getting vapes, they're getting tobacco. We need to figure out how they're getting them, why they're getting them, and attack and address those measures. There's a separate issue of adult tobacco use, and where you decide where adults start is an open question. But the issue of what future 40-year-olds and 60-year-olds and 80-year-olds can do with their free choice around tobacco is something I don't think that addresses the issue of youth tobacco use or tobacco use in general, since most tobacco use starts at a young age. And B, I think does come with consequences and cost. Our power to limit is not limitless. Every time we establish a new rule, we have to think about the pros and cons and how it advances policy and how it lands with residents. And what I've heard from residents and what I feel myself is that this is local government taking our power too far.
Something that hasn't been mentioned with respect to this ordinance and what it will eventually do, it will help protect children who live in households in which their parents smoke. Secondhand smoke is probably just as lethal as regular smoke. This will help phase that out. The other thing I want to say, and we got an email over the weekend, I think it was, from a healthcare professional who has been working on legislation like this, is that these tobacco companies, they are working behind the scenes to market their products to children. They are. You know, there are smoking products, and then they became flavored smoking products. Then it was smokeless tobacco, chewing tobacco, again, with flavors. When that faded out, then it's vaping. And I think Massachusetts has a ban on flavored vaping. And now it's little pouches with nicotine that you can just put inside your mouth, and those are flavored, and children could be addicted to those. This ordinance helps phase this out so it can protect children from the harms of tobacco. So I hope this council passes this new ordinance. I'm going to vote for it, and I hope everyone does. Thank you.
There was a pulmonologist on TV not too long ago who said that the way to keep adults from smoking, which we all know is a killer, is to keep our young people from smoking. J.P. Lorillard sent a lawyer to a meeting here at City Hall that I attended. I think this was a couple of years ago when we were raising the age of smoking. And as Councilor Lucas has pointed out, these companies, the tobacco companies, make it their business to make sure that they, in every way that they can, start hooking young people on nicotine. And the amount of nicotine, as we know, in vaping products, which are touted to be safer than tobacco products, has increased by a lot. So that if they don't, while they don't get smoke into their lungs, they do get massive amounts of nicotine.
Clear at the outset, I do not smoke. I never have smoked. I don't intend on smoking, so this isn't going to affect me either way. And I certainly understand the healthcare risks that are associated with smoking. And if I actually thought that this action by the Newton City Council was going to somehow stop or prevent one person from smoking, then I guess I would consider voting for it. But do we really think that because the Newton City Council is going to try and tell people that they don't have access, that they can't have access to a product, as Council Block pointed out and others, that is 100% legal, that's actually going to prevent them from getting cigarettes and smoking? I don't think so. It was probably one of the most depressing days that I have had recently. And that's because I woke up and I thought to myself, I cannot believe that I'm living in a country that would elect a convicted felon, a narcissist, and I can use a whole bunch of other not so positive words to describe the man that was sworn into office yesterday. And the problem is, it's stuff like this, where we think that we know better than everybody else, and we're gonna tell people what they can do and not do when it comes to purchasing a legal product. And you can't just poo-hoo the alcohol argument. You can't just poo-hoo the fact that this city embraced marijuana establishments. I mean, it just flies in the face. So the reason, and people just don't seem to get it, especially Newton Democrats. People in this country are sick and tired of people like on the Newton City Council taking actions that are telling them what to do and what not to do, even though it's legal. And people are fed up with that. And as a result, we have a buffoon who is now running this country again. And when are we going to ever learn that, you know, maybe we aren't smarter than everybody else, like we seem to think at times. And at some point, well, unless the man, it wouldn't surprise me if he tried to change the Constitution to allow people to run for a third term, but the only thing I can hang my hat on is that this will hopefully be it. Won't have to deal with this again. But
Counselor Gentile, you're running out of time. Do you want another 30 seconds or a minute?
nah, I think people probably understand the point that I'm making. And, you know, wokeness, look what it got us. Okay, so let people do what they want to do when it comes to legal products, whether they choose to use them or not, and stay out of their homes.
I asked my kids, who are all born, who have not yet aged 21, they were born after March 1st, 2004. And they all supported this. I asked a bunch of their friends, they supported this. And I asked, as you heard, the members who were appointed to the Youth Commission were all asked, and they supported this. It's not a huge sample size. It's significant, but not huge. And what I can tell you is that everyone to whom this would apply supported it. The only people who I've heard opposition from are the people to whom it wouldn't apply, and the people who have a financial interest in making it apply or preventing it from applying to them.
The comments made about government overreach reminds me of the arguments made many years ago about the requirements to use safety belts when driving and to wear helmets when riding a motorcycle. It's clear that many lives have been saved by this government overreach. It will be clear many years from now that this item will have saved many lives also. So I am in strong support of this.
Big difference between prohibition in 19, whatever it was, 16, 18, and a gradual incremental year by year increase in prohibition of purchasing cigarettes. Prohibition was banned alcohol from everyone all at once. We're not trying to do that. I think this is a particularly elegant solution to reducing the availability of a dangerous product. And I'm very appreciative that Brookline took the step and established its constitutionality through the SJC.
I am a victim of secondhand smoke. My mother started smoking as a teenager and she tried to quit. But for the first 3 kids, she was still smoking. But she finally quit for the last 2 of my siblings. Do you know what? The first 3, my brother and I and my sister, we were sick with so many different ailments throughout our childhood, and we're still sick. And my youngest 2 siblings, they had probably maybe 10%, if that, ailments during their childhood and even now. Secondhand smoke does affect a lot more people. And I support anything to stop kids from starting to smoke.
Councillor Krinsman drew the comparison to assault weapons, and I was thinking about guns more generally, where we know that the highest risk factor of being injured by a gun is proximity to a gun. I feel similarly about these tobacco products.
I particularly like something that Councillor Humphrey said at the meeting the other night at Programs and Services. We have been taking steps towards the cessation of the use of tobacco for 6 decades, starting in 1966, when they started to put a warning about cigarettes on the packages. We've taken ads of off television for smoking. We have, in Newton, we've taken many steps. You can't smoke in a public building. We're trying to do everything we can, except this, to get people to stop smoking. And this is a good step to, with a long phase out, to make our citizens healthier.
The approach we're taking is one of gradualism. It is, drawing on the nudge theory that was published in 2008 by Cass Sunstein and others, the idea that by making small policy changes, you can start shifting society into a better direction, shifting people's personal behavior and choices into a better direction. The idea here is to reduce the ease of access. And as Councillor Albright said, something that I talked about in committee is the idea that this is consistent with the policies we have already taken as a city on this issue. We raised the age from 18 to 21. We started having inspections by the health department where they have people go in and attempt to buy cigarettes and things like that underage. The idea there is keep it away from the high school kids. Well, something like this keeps it away from the high school kids via older siblings. It also keeps it away from our college students and so forth. It keeps it somebody who maybe moved here after having started smoking. It's going to be a little bit harder to get their products. They're going to have to go somewhere else, and maybe that's going to help them in the process of quitting and so forth. That's the theory behind this.
That we've been doing things to stop smoking, to educate people since about the early 1960s. We've been doing it with not allowing advertising, television, billboards, all this. We do education in schools. Your primary care doctor talks to children about not smoking, among other things. There's so much, I'm not going to go through it all, but we've done a tremendous amount and we've been effective. As you said, about 50% less people smoke and there's fewer smokers every year. It is working. So I'm going to say we've been doing it incrementally for the last 65 years.
Councillor, I appreciate that. But I think we've been doing all these things, and if they were working, we wouldn't be talking about this ordinance tonight. We need to start talking about what isn't working, and that's mostly within the schools and families.